Okay, right. Okay, that's the agenda. And for today, the first hour we have a guest speaker, special guest speaker, just like we had a special guest speaker the other day, Mr. Oscar Chang, right, from Silicon Valley. And after the session, we won't take that long for no, not more than an hour for us to have questions and answers, so that our guest speaker can can continue with his work. And after that, we're going to have a continue with our group project, because again, today is the best time to finish your work and then to finalize and also to edit and also to make it as perfect as you want it to be, your group members want it to be, and also to ready to present tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's presentation, we will follow the sequence of the group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each group will have plenty of time, 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions and answer session. And after all the groups completed the presentation, we'll have open discussion, right? Okay. Okay, without further ado, right? So today's work is this presentation, and I think our guest speaker is ready here. Okay, so we have a special guest speaker today. It's his name is hello Hakim.
Hello.
Okay,
everyone.
you know here. All right, here's Muhammad Hakim. Right, and he is zooming in from New Jersey. And I will let him introduce himself, just like how Mr. Oscar Chang introduced himself. I think the best way is for the person to introduce. But briefly, right? Muhammad Hakim is a Malaysian born and first generation, and he is currently the senior manager at Amazon, Amazon Tech, and what he does is he makes friends with technology and become good friends with technology and design systems actually, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting, but I will let Mr. Hakim explain. And the topic for today, the theme is working in Amazon. As we know, that Amazon is perhaps the biggest company in America, and the owner of Amazon just came back from outer space, right? So that's how you read about it. But this is a time. This is a conversation that we is fortunate to have on someone who has a first-hand experience, not only designing, but also working primarily. The focus of this discussion is to to look at the technology of working in a high technology environment, right? So we will begin with Mr. Hakim's sharing with his personal history, and also when we have a look at some professional questions that I'm gonna ask, and then after that we'll invite Professor Velez to ask a few questions as well, based, I think, on what we asked Mr. Oscar Chang. I think those are exciting questions that relate to what we're doing in this class. And after that, it's yours, class. It's yours to have this conversation with Mr. Hakim Azli. All right? Okay. All right. Yes, Professor Velez.
I'm sorry. Can you make Dariana a co-host so that she can record as well?
Okay. All right.
I am not able to do it. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
right.
thank you,
Mr. Hakim, just to say that that's Professor Velez is a co-professor, co-instructor, and Ms. Dariana Adran is the one who put everything together from with the help of CETYS in Mexico, right? All right. Thank you, Hakim. Right. Go ahead. It's yours.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your time today and allowing me to present. And Dr. Raman, appreciate the introduction, and Mr. Velez and
Dr. Velez, yes. Right.
Dr. Velez, apologize, and for allowing me to partake in this. Again, my name is Hakim. I am, my official title, I guess, is it's called the Senior BIM Manager. BIM is the acronym for Building Information Modeling. It's a synonymous term used in the architecture industry. Is relatively new, I'd say new, within the past like 8 years, 8 to 10 years. And it's, it gets tossed around a lot. So, and it touches a lot of points in the architecture and engineering and construction industry. And specifically, actually, I have a host disabled. Is there a way for me to share screen?
Yeah.
It's saying disabled.
Okay. Hakeem wants to share the screen, so.
Got it. I got it now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think
Great.
it's ready.
All right. Okay.
Awesome. So, I'm going to talk a little bit just for context in terms of what to expect in the next couple of minutes. I'll go over a little bit about me. I think this is some importance of context of how I got to where I'm going to be as a segue into essentially the conversation, which hopefully is relevant to the topic that's being discussed in this course. And then we talk about just specifically what I do and the type of technology in the realm that I'm part of, which is called Just Walk Out Technology on behalf of Amazon. And so as you're if you're not familiar what that is, I recommend kind of looking it up and seeing what some of the buzz is out there. You can Google it, watch some clips, and then we can talk about kind of the impact of that technology and on the environment and consumer behavior, and then kind of touch on some of the things that is already publicly known in terms of what's next. And then we get into questions. Yeah, so let me start. As I mentioned, I would talk a little bit about me in terms of, and I want to address this from the context of my work and where I've started. So this is actually a presentation that I did with Pioneer Academy last year, but I've actually added more content at the end. So bear with me if you've seen it. So, and the context is, it talks about just where I've started and how my interests have evolved into, as a segue to where some of the work that I do now and how, we get from the starting image of painting and my desire for paint and artwork and presentation in the form of mixed media medium, using different mediums, mixed media, to represent something that's in front of me, to the technology aspect of where I am today. So, it talks about from 2005, my desire to experiment with different materials such as oil paint, up to 2006 with pastel, jumping into scaling that up to acrylic paint 2007. This is for context in high school. So I graduated high school in 2008. So this is kind of works that I've done in high school. And oftentimes in that age span, you kind of are just still trying to figure it out, like in terms of where you want to be. And part of the reason why I bring this up in these type of presentation is to allude to the fact that you may not necessarily know where you're going to end up in the next 10 years, but understanding kind of the path to get to a place of work or being able to do what it is that you actually want to do, and kind of taking it one step at a time, but understanding and still staying true to what it is that you're passionate about from the beginning. In this case, you'll start to see how the art translates to what I end up doing, and it may not be obvious, but it's still really relevant in the 10 years, 12 years after my graduation. Continue to kind of touch on the murals. It's still high school, and I graduated this year. And then I went to architecture school. So in architecture school, it was more about the technical drawings, the representation of lines to communicate your design intent, talking about perspectives, talking about how people maneuver space in an abstract way. So that was the first kind of year. And then taking that a little bit farther and then continuing that abstractness, but trying to represent it in a way that is more tactical in terms of how buildings come together, where when you look at an image, for example, like the image on the left, talking about how to communicate that with minimal words, context. How would you describe that that experience of a space? And then the rendering aspect of it, so getting into kind of translating the knowledge of using paint and sketches and pencils as different mediums, taking it to the digital side. How do you use Photoshop to communicate your your design intent, the experience of a user for that particular design or use case, and further developing it, kind of then bringing back some of the sketching, and then mixing it with the like programs like Adobe to kind of communicate how people engage with an environment, while also scaling down to the individual and their micro engagement with that environment, such as touching a glass, how the hand moves within a space, things like that. And again, honing into kind of this, staying true to the skill set that was that is my desire, which is artwork and presentation, and then bringing it into migrating it into the digital space. And then we get into like material experimentation, playing with acrylic, messing around with laser cutters. Like there's different tools out there, and integrating those tools to elevate your design, or to kind of experiment essentially, right? So a lot of the I would say the first 4 years of high school was more about experimentation in what I can produce with my hands. And then the following 5 years, which is the architecture school time, and I went to Temple University, it was more about experimenting with the technology to, it was less about what my hand can produce, more so about what technology can help me produce to communicate the intent of what I'm trying to communicate. How you cut wood, how you bend acrylic, how you use laser cutters, 3D printers, to essentially communicate the design of something. And then we get into large scale modeling, still using the hand, this case is using the hand and integrating it with some of those technologies like laser cutters and things like that, to produce large scale models. And this example is the presentation for a theater in Philadelphia, a contemporary art museum. Playing with curves and how you utilize like 3D printers and laser cutters to communicate that at this facade is going to be a curve. How you communicate structural, how the building can come together in a large scale way that when you are presenting it, the industry experts at the time understand what your intent is, because they've been in it for a longer time. So that's what a typical critique will look like, where they just look at you like you have 5 years as you're trying to explain your design intent. So at that point, I've already graduated. I graduated Temple, and then so get into the professional world. So it's less about concepts, and more about taking that design, following an industry standard. In this case, how construction documents, which are documents that general contractors use to help to construct the building or the space, whatever it is, following that industry to communicate your design intent in a more technical way that's understood by that industry. In this case, dealing with the US industry, which has different standards than Singapore, for example, the APAC or the EMEA region. So they have, kind of following to that norm, and communicating, again, still the design intent, except now it's more honed into the digital representation, just because the industry has adopted, softwares like Autodesk, Revit, AutoCAD, and kind of learning that skill to still communicate what your intent is for design in a different medium. So 2014, 2015 was more about just production work, and there's still a beauty in the drawing aspect of it, in terms of like the art, the way the drawing looks, how you organize the drawings. You still take cues from what you were learning in the past, in terms of presentation of the final presentation. We take pride in that. Not every drawing is going to look as nice, because some take more ownership than others, and I'm more about making sure that there's no clashes between the information and things like that. So still kind of honing into the cue of what I've learned. And then in the following year, around 2016, I started to get into more of the start to dabble into like app development, while at the same time working in the architecture industry. Having completed my first project, meaning that it was built, it was completed the construction documents, set the renderings and everything, and then it was built inside a mall environment. This was actually the first Sam Edelman store. For the ladies, it's a shoe store that was built in the United States. And as they were expanding their program, while at the same time, I got a little bit too comfortable with the architecture side, and I wanted to try something very different. So I was really interested in software development, and I actually got my master's at Fairleigh Dickinson University in Teaneck, New Jersey, in computer science. So I got my master's, MA in MS in computer science. And so I was really interested. I was surrounded by a lot of people who were developers, UI, UX designers, database developers, things of that nature. And so I really wanted to kind of hone into that side of the world, while also figuring out whether I still wanted to do architecture at the time. I wasn't sure at the time whether I want to pivot or not. So then I continued to, I developed the first app, released it. It didn't do that well, and I learned a lot from it. So that's kind of like a lesson too, in that don't be afraid to fail, right? Fail is a strong word, but don't be afraid to take lessons from things that don't quite work out as you intended for it to, and then continue to track on it, because it's not always about the first thing that you do. It's always about how you the progress and the journey. So continue to develop apps while also still working in the architecture world. At this point, I was working in New York. Previously, I was working in New Jersey. So different energy. The environment is very different in terms of the workspace, the workplace. But still, the goal of learning software at the same time continuing with architecture still remain, despite the evolution of the workplace, and also working on the next project, which was called Tomo. And then getting into 2018, I started to really dabble into what's under the hood of software development. What does the code look like, while I still at the same time developing the architecture side. So you saw it's been 3 years thus far that I've kind of really got into the software and development world. And at this point, I was trying to decide, do I need to pivot, or do I need to merge the two disciplines, which is the construction, which is the built space, versus the digital, right? Like the software aspect of it. What's really under the hood? In this example, how does a bank actually function in terms of how money exchanges, and how the user interacts with the interfaces that's presented in front of them, such as this iPad, and how all of that kind of how all that kind of marries into the technology and the digital and then the physical space. So getting into 2019, I moved to I moved to Seattle. So from Jersey to New York to Seattle, all the way on the West Coast, so that I actually went out there to get just to try my luck to get a job at Amazon. I was applying to them all the way on the East Coast for like a year or so. It was pretty much every week. I would do like 3 resumes. Got no love, and I said, let me pack my bags and go there, and see if I have better chance of just by being present, and the energy and consuming the energy and everything else. So I went there, continued to work at my previous firm called Interior Architects, and then continued to apply, and eventually I landed an interview, and fortunately was able to land the job. So this was around 2019. Again, still dabbling in the development world and also the architecture world, but the beauty of it was the particular program that I was part of. I was on the store development team, so I came in through the architecture construction side, where this program, the Amazon Go, which they use a just walk out technology, which is relatively new. It uses vision algorithm, and I'll get a little bit more into that in the next few slides. But the beauty of it is they really literally integrate technology into the built space, and because it's brand new, there was a lot of unknowns, and that was what excited me about this particular role. This was actually the same role that I've been applying to while I was in the East Coast, until and then finally they gave me a chance. So now at this point, I was playing more in the the Autodesk environment called Dynamo. So, the image on the left it's called design script. So it's more about nodes and developing, like a plug and play and to automate some of the things that you do in the architecture industry. So a lot of my focus at this point in my life was more about automating the work that I've been doing manually in the past 5-6 years of my professional career. Whether it's the documentation, the drawings, the rendering, like how, like kind of reframing and thinking about how we automate some of those things to reduce the amount of hours spent on specific tasks that the industry otherwise would not have tried to automate, just because of the way, just the mindset of it. A lot of the industry leaders in architecture, some of them are still caught up in the hand drawing world, and some of them still caught up in the AutoCAD world even, but it's progressing towards more of the 3D environment and visualizing 3D environment and automating in the 3D environment. So this was essentially the presentation that, up to the slide, is the presentation that I had presented to the Pioneer Academy, I think it might have been 2 years ago. So this next piece is more in tune with, it's more focused on the Amazon Go and Just Walk Out concept. And kind of like what it is. And there's a lot of questions that you can be asked about the type of work and, how do you do this and how does this work? So yeah, the next aspect is that focus. So and what I do today is kind of, it's the same kind of question always gets asked. How do we integrate a technology which has a physical presence? On the top left is they're pucks. They're called pucks. So that's where the cameras are. They're hung in the ceiling, and that's kind of what they look like. How do we integrate the top right image, which is called the Amazon One device, which is basically a customer would, to get into the space, you need to go through a gate. And one way you would do it is if you scan a QR code on your Amazon Go app. The other way you would do it is if you scan your palm over this device and it knows who you are based on the uniqueness of your palm, and the gate opens. And so how do you integrate that into the customer experience of the built space? And then the image on the bottom left is about shelf sensor technology. And it looks like a regular shelf, but there's technology embedded into it. It knows when a customer pulled the product off, and it knows that there's a delta between the weight of what it used to be with 3 products on it versus 2 products. And then when a user would put one product back, and then the increase in weight, and then calibrating it and all those things. And then the bottom right is a shopping cart. Again, these are all information that has been publicly released. There's many more things, but she's sharing what the world already knows or aware of. And the shopping cart is essentially it's a smart cart where you would pick a product. It would tell you, how much something costs. It would, when you put it into your cart, you select the product that you took, and then it knows the weight of it, and then it's able to tell you based on the weight censored within the cart, your total amount, what your total amount is going to be. Again, like at the end of the day, the core goal is to reduce the friction that exists today, which is, at least in this environment, which is to reduce the amount of time spent waiting. In this case, is waiting to check out. Oftentimes there are places where maybe the store layout is inefficient, and therefore, or there's just a lot of volume coming in and people have to wait online constantly. There's peak hours or peak seasons where that exists. And that hampers on the customer experience, and this potential to lose consumers as a result, because they don't want to wait online. They know that particular place is always full, etc. So it's just kind of like breaking that barrier by integrating the technology and testing new technology. So, a lot of what I do is figuring out, like, where do we test this? Do we test this in that store? Do we test this in this store where it's this like a 2,000 square foot space? Or do we, kind of like trying to figure out across the breadth of all the zooming out really, and trying to figure out where do we test these artifacts, and when do we say, nope, this is not going to work for the consumer, it gives them a bad experience. How do we modify it, or do we kill the project? And then I want to get a little bit into kind of like the core of what this is. So with the technology in the ceiling, you have a bunch of cameras located, and this is a graphical representation of what the algorithm and the vision tech sees. These rectangles that you see on the screen are racks, so they're the shelving that we saw in the last image. It knows how people have moved throughout the space. So now we get into the world of data as it relates to consumer behavior in a particular built space. So right now we're focused on retail. So for retail food and kind of like convenience space. So how does a consumer shop in a grocery space when they shop for produce? Do they go to produce and then do they go to bakery and then they go to the fish? What are some of the common patterns? And that was possible partially before, where they would have tech integrated at the front door. They would say, okay, there's 20, it would be like a people counter, for example. But the difference here with what we're doing is that it's now taking into consideration the entire environment, right? So it understands consumer behavior. And I want to clarify that we don't, the tech doesn't necessarily follow a specific, like it doesn't know John Doe is in that store. What it knows is there's somebody in the store, it's a customer, and it's picking up this product, and then it's actually aggregating that information and try to tell a story for how to improve the space, right? So if one store we open, for example, has high volume in produce, it's in a suburban area, this is the demographic. For whatever reason, a lot more people within that demographic that fit that profile tend to shop for bananas more, for example, right? So trying to understand that and try to align it with the data that we're collecting and we're understanding of consumer behavior, and is shaping the next space. And so that's what I think for me is really interesting is we're in the data collection phase to understand behavior. And the beauty of it is in the future, this data is going to help inform the next experience, right? So we don't really know yet, I don't think. But in the future, we'll see kind of like something brand new that will integrate the technology based on the information that we have on how customers shop and behave. And then, what the tech sees is that image previously, and this is what we see. We still see the wood material. We still see like the same cues that we know. And the thing about technology and integrating something relatively new like this is you don't want to have to teach the consumer too many things at once. So it's really interesting how the rolling out of the technology occurs. So we want to say, all right, consumers know a refrigerated case, right? We're going to, and then they know products on shelves, they know how to take it off. Like we're going to replicate that, but with the technology. And how do we do that? So those are kind of like the high level questions, I guess, asked, and really smart people way smarter than me, that end up trying to figure out the tech. How do we design the gates so that it doesn't feel like a factory, or what are the materials that store designers should use to make it feel like it's selling food? One of the things that Amazon and most companies do is they get user feedback. So probably like 2 years ago, we got user feedback. Like thousands of people got free $20 Amazon gift cards, and we asked them to shop the store, and they give us a bunch of feedback. Some of them were like, "Well, we didn't know Amazon Go was a store that sold food. Like we thought it was a store that sold Alexas and devices. And so how do we change that mindset?" And then part of the output was material change, consumer education, associate training. Like there are different kind of action items that resulted from the feedback. While at the core of it, the technology persisted. The technology is still, as it's still being developed, it's still, the core of it is still there in terms of there being pucks in the ceiling, cameras in the ceiling that tracks movement and consumer behavior and things like that. This is an image PwC put together, but it talks about just at a high level what the technology is trying to do. But but this image is interesting because it's talking about produce. So produce was one of the things that we had to unlock. The Amazon Go, there were no produce. And then we opened up, which is more focused on convenience, so sodas and drinks and meal kits and things like that. So now we were like, okay, well, the consumer wants grocery. And in grocery space, there's produce, there's, there's vegetables, and there's the mechanical aspect of those things too. A vegetable needs to be misted on every, couple of hours or something every, I don't know what the cadence is. It needs to be misted on, like with water, right? How do we integrate that and not disrupt the technology while also not disrupting the consumer behavior? How do we do produce that we cannot have sensor that senses weight to track produce, because produce could be a variable amount. You're not always stocking 100 apples, right? How do we make that work with the technology and also with the experience of the associate who has to restock that produce when it's running low? And how do we communicate to the associate and all those things, right? Yeah, that was a really interesting one because once we were able to unlock, which essentially, if you zoom out, it's a box with variable products that consume variable amount of weights that's sorted in a horizontal manner in this case, right? And some of them are tilted, some of them are not. So how do we work that, right? How do we make that work? And then last one, we'll talk about what's next. So we introduced, there's a store called Amazon Fresh Factoria, which we just opened, which has all of those components that we're spending 3 years to kind of integrate to make it unlock, basically, we say. Produce is in there. So now the consumer can shop at a grocery space without feeling like they're not in a grocery space, without feeling, they know that the biggest difference is the experience, especially at the end, where they're just, walking out of a store without having to deal with cashiers. Although at the same time, again, based on feedback from consumers, is some people just want to use cash, right? They don't want to come into a store with an app. So we still allow that, right? We allow consumers who, and there's also laws on cash, like New York City is a law where you have to accept cash in a retail space. You can't not. And other places, they don't really care as much as New York City, and that's the inclusionness of that. So really like trying to understand, also integrating not just consumer behavior, but geographical and city laws and things like that. And there's also ADA requirements for wheelchairs, people with wheelchairs, and that kind of really, there's a lot that goes into making the space work while at the same time making it feel like it's the same space you've been shopping in all this time. What's next, I guess, is we're starting to integrate the tech in other retailers, like Hudson News. You'll start seeing them across airports. So what I like about that concept is that because it's in airports, more people who are not tied to a specific region can experience it. So, we're open in Seattle, New York, California, and those kind of within the States, but people traveling, migrate through the airport. So they have an opportunity to, and Hudson has a presence in several airports, so that they have an ability to experience the technology and really kind of try to break it, try to understand how can I trick this so it looks like I'm getting free product. Try as you want, you'll get charged for it. And other things within the retail grocery space. And I guess what's next could be, people often ask, you're doing food just now, right? What about like apparel? What about all these other kind of retail type of stores and concepts? And is it just retail in the future? I don't know, personally don't really know the answer to that. That's way above me. But all I know is there are competitors in the vision algorithm space. There are competitors in consumer friction reduction space, such as Jack and Jones and different parts of the world too. Alibaba's in the space. Countries are in the space like Israel, Netherlands. They're trying to unlock 24-hour automated systems. Like it's being worked on. So Amazon's not really the only one in the space, but it's really interesting to see the adoption of it, the adoption of technology, and as it influences the the built space. And the question that I always ask is, is the technology influencing the space, or will the space influence the technology in the development that we do? And I think it's a mix of both, but I'm leaning towards the latter, which is that the consumer is actually going to influence the technology. Especially that's our leadership principle. One of our is the consumer is always right. So yeah, so that's kind of where my take on that question lies. Yeah, that's it. So I know that was a lot, but thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the screen, to the large group yet.
I have to release, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in 20 minutes of presentation by Hakeem, gives us well, at least from psychologically, it's brought from culture to management of people, to management of technology, and also to the future, as well as the mind of someone who designs all these things, right? So I think there's a lot of things. I don't want to spend time myself asking these questions, but I believe that all of you, have questions, and you deserve all the time to ask Hakeem this question, right? Only I have one question, and after that, we'll open to Professor Velez questions and session, Hakeem, and it's a fascinating that you presented as well, and I could hear the language of artificial intelligence, the jargon they use, the language you use, the terms you use, are all is about the language of the future. And even you admitted that you don't know where things are going, but you are experiencing yourself as a creator of technological change, and also going back, deconstructing technology, as well as constructing new things and doing at the the background of it, creating all the systems, right? My question here is Hakeem, you move from art to technology, right? And perhaps I want to jump into this the next thing, right? What do you see that this as a future of the future of work, and also the future of work, and how do you know that? Well, not how do you know, but what do you think that our graduates and also high school need to do in order to prepare for this future that you are part of the one creating, I think?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do think, I'm not sure that the same application of like having the technology in the ceiling, is going to be applied to a workspace, but I do think that the concept is true, where the concept of understanding how people work and understanding an evolution of it across time, meaning, how did COVID impact the people's behavior, or their need to be at home and or in the office. Their mechanism for collecting that data or understanding that behavior is still reigns true, and it can be applied to the workspace. And there's tech that does that now, but I'm not sure if they, yeah, I'm not too familiar with what and how they're doing that, and at what scale. I guess relative to the way that the retail, how we're doing it in here. And then the second question regarding how to prepare for that. So I say we're shifting towards data. Like, data is king at this point, or queen. So data is there, and like so it's not, you don't always have to be the one that writes the software to collect data to be successful, but really understanding how to process it, because the more it becomes vital to the development of the future state of different industries, the more you need to be able to understand and process that information. So whether you are very good at communicating raw data and converting it to something that the people you present to can understand is very important skill, just as much as it is to be the one that writes the software that collects the data, processes it, because a lot of it is going to be raw data and how you process that raw data.
Okay, right. Thank you, Hakim. So, all right, thank you, Hakim. And Professor Velez, is yours round.
Thank you, Hakim. It's been a great presentation. Fantastic to see how you have progressed from arts and architecture and then to technology, and how you're blending those two areas, blending together. And it's wonderful to see what you had just said today. I have a question regarding how this overall system works, or how it is being designed. My question is, what is the profile of the customer, the typical customer? Because my guess is that this is not yet a kind of massive system, at least not yet, but probably it is geared towards a particular kind of customer. I was also, let me say kind of a second question in connection. I was thinking that in these kind of stores, the person that enters is assumed to be a customer, every person that enters. But what happens when the person comes in with a guest, and the guest is just, maybe it's a teenager kid, and she's not buying anything, just going with the mom and seeing the stuff. Is there something in place to take care of those kind of non-customers also walking in?
Yes,
Yes.
those are really good questions. Those are like really high level questions that we've asked from the beginning. So the way that it works, to answer how it actually works when do you have guests, is the customer or the person with the scanning you in would scan the person in, the guest in, and then scan themselves in. So there's a 2-click engagement. So we've actually tested what happens when a mother walks in with a baby cart. What happens when somebody walks in with a shopping cart? Is it going to hit the gate, break the glass? Like we really test that. So we have labs that test that. And so we install this in full-scale stores and then test kind of how to break it. We really have scenarios for people to break. Say, hey, walk in there by running, or walk in there by sliding. And so we test a lot of those scenarios. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, let's have all of you ask questions, right? I think. Yes, Anna.
Yes.
Right.
Hi. First of all, nice meeting you, and thank you for your speech. So my question is the pricing of the stuff that Amazon Go sells. Is there like the same prices at a regular store? So what makes it more attractive to a customer? So between a regular store to Amazon Go.
That's a good question. Amazon, being the specific company that it is, customer first. So they will eat losses out as a simplified way to eat. They will eat losses based on slippage and things like that by ensuring that the price is competitive for all the products that they produce. And then figure out ways to reduce that cost through better procurement and sourcing. They have a lot of partners where they can source, because they're buying in greater bulk or things like that. So I would say from a competitive standpoint in terms of pricing, it's if not cheaper, it will be the same price. On the other end though, they also have so they're trying to hit in the food space different tiers of economic, social, demographic like areas. So, you know, they have like the higher end organic food stores, they have, which is Whole Foods, you know, and then they have the lower tier, which is fresh, and then they have the everyday kind of convenience. So um, they have, because they are saturating the at different levels, they're able to procure and supply prices at competitive prices, essentially, the products.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's a
Welcome.
good question, Anna. Right. Others, there's a chance. Hakeem, how much time do you have to spare with us with this you know, a very educational session?
I have 10 minutes. Yeah, I have till 9:15. So yeah, I can go
Oh,
a little bit over too if needed.
9:15 here.
9:15.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Okay. It's
my
okay.
computer's on Pacific Standard Time still.
Okay. All right. Question. Maybe while others are thinking of the questions, let me ask you this question, Hakeem. Right, a bit of pre Amazon. What makes you want to work with Amazon, and being with Amazon now? How do you describe the culture of work in Amazon?
That's a good question. So I specifically wanted this one role. Like everything else was noise to me because it merged the two disciplines that I alluded to earlier, which was the developed software side and also the physical space. I was in a dilemma a couple years ago saying I want to pivot to the software side because they paid more, or stay in the architecture side and just suffer for a couple more years. So this particular one was very unique just because it was fairly new, and you know, it allowed me that. I'm sure there were other companies, but I wanted to work at Amazon because and I was correct in that assumption. The culture is really interesting. So for some context, I actually manage a team of 5 people out of India. So there's a complete time zone difference. You know, there's a whole culture around how to work with people you probably will never meet for a long time, if ever. You know, kind of like that is fairly like a newer concept in terms of working. But particularly, I want to work for Amazon because they have what's called a leadership principle, which defines the culture. So if you look up Amazon's leadership principle, there's 12. There's actually 14 now. They added 2 recently. But the leadership principle is the guiding descriptor of how every employee, no matter what level you're on, should make their decisions. So as you know, I've mentioned, customer obsession is one of the leadership principles, and it describes what that represents to the company. And everybody, no matter what, whether you are working on the sales floor or you are the director or Jeff himself, right? Jeff Bezos himself follows these 12 principles, 14 now, as a way to guide their decision making. Is what we're doing going to benefit the customer, or is it going to affect them, you know, in the way they, you know, slow them down and things? So that by everyone following the same principle, we are at like, I don't even know how many employees there are. I know that when I was starting, they were doing orientation for 300 people every week, only in the Seattle area office, and forget about like the rest of the world. So 300 people every single week, nonstop for a whole year and some. And so I guess we're grown to, I don't even know, I can't even guess how much we are in terms of employees now. But no matter how many people we grow, still the same guiding principle exists in terms of, and that is what shapes the culture. And the second piece is Amazon's really big on writing. Going back to the first question that you asked is how to prepare. Writing is very important, especially if you're going to go into the tech world. Writing allows you to is a culture that we have. So we have this thing where we if you want to present something, we don't present it in PowerPoints. We don't believe in that. We believe in 1-pagers or 6-pagers. We also have this culture, this concept called PRFAQ, where anybody in the company can write a 6-page document explaining their idea. And then it goes to what's called the S team, which consists of Jeff. Well, not Jeff anymore because he's not there's a new CEO, but the S team would review all the PRFAQs documents and then fund it. Amazon Go started as a PRFAQ. That concept of saying we need to integrate vision algorithm into customers into stores so people don't have to wait online anymore. Like that was like the headline, and that got funded. And look at where we are now. So the idea is that like anybody in the company has the opportunity to reach every tier in the company through writing, which is very interesting. Yeah.
That is very interesting. Something that I didn't really be aware of, because we teach writing all the time here, right, Professor Velez? But now that we need to pay attention to making people be able to write very well, communicate, and a fascinating thing that it's either 1 page or 6 pages. Why is that so?
They must have done a study. I'm sure they did a study that says, to talk about the retention rate that has I guess factors are retention rate, or like time, because the more detailed paper or the more the directors and people higher up, their time is valuable. So they have to control that and they have to standardize that. So a lot of it, there's a structure and a rhyme and reason for it.
Okay.
That exists. I'm sure they've done a study for it. I haven't myself read it, but that's, I know, 1 or 6.
Okay. All right. Let's open this to other questions. Hakeem mentioned that he's also working with software engineers from developers from India. So any one of us from that part of the world, Subhashri, Shalini, Manali, Vibhushana, do you have any questions relating to that? Or Janani? Right.
Professor, I have a doubt from the Amazon Go presentation. May I ask?
Yes,
sure.
Please.
Thank you for this presentation. It was very useful and insightful. Got to learn a lot about the AI and technology. My question is that in normal departmental store, using the cart, people end up purchasing a lot more than they have already planned to. So in Amazon Go, the cart describes the rate the consumers have purchased. So won't this make consumer more conscious about their purchase, and won't it reduce the amount or the quantity they purchase because they become rate conscious? So won't they end up buying less, or won't they be sticking to their budget?
I don't quite know from a personal experience how, I haven't shopped using the cart myself. But I would imagine, yes, right? Like people are now given the data to be aware of to match it against the budget that they came in with. You go to a store, oftentimes a department store, you end up, you want to buy toothpaste, you end up leaving with a couch. So it's like, sometimes you just, yes, I guess it's just data visibility. And I'm not sure we're in the game of kind of tricking people to buy more so that they purchase and spend more. Rather, the customer, giving customer data will enhance their experience, and therefore they may come back as a result of it. So they may not purchase as much today, but maybe tomorrow they'll continue to be a regular customer as a result of that visibility.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Good question, Janani. I think that's a wonderful question on consumerism. All right, one last question from the audience, and then I'll ask one last question, and Professor Velez will be in a question, and perhaps Dariana too. Right? Okay, one last question.
Thank you so much for your
Andrea,
time.
yes.
I would love to know, what are the, it is an advantage, but I want to know how has being bicultural has helped you on this work?
Okay.
So a lot of being bicultural, I think more so for me, living in the U.S. and being first generation immigrants. Actually, you guys may not know this, but Dr. Rahman is my father. But being coming from as first generation, you know, we had the environment. I moved in when I was 8. We've had the environment of what was, which was, you know, the village culture. It was much slower, you know, and then having moved here, and really understanding a different pace of life, you know, from working in New Jersey and then New York City, which is just a whole different time span. It has helped to, it has given me footing in terms of where I've come from to help guide where I want to be. So there's aspects of, when we talk about AI, there's departments that do the ethics of AI, right? Like, you know, why are more, how do you differentiate between a dog's face versus a human face? And, you know, how come the is being trained to see more based on skin tone and things like that. So being in this world will allow me and has allowed me apply some of the disadvantages that I've recognized from the places that I've come from to help influence the evolution of the technology. So I think that kind of answers a bit of what you're saying, but being being able to know, to still keep in mind where you've come from and the people that you've surrounded yourself with growing up, and keeping them in mind while still integrating and developing the technology is very important, because then you need to have that voice in the room. Otherwise, it's the same kind of like it's the same voice that develops technology. And we need that multicultural influence in the development of these things, especially when it comes to AI, because it's so new.
Okay. Thank you, Hakim, for mentioning that. I was about to leave it to the end, right? Okay, right. But Hakim, one question. I think this question is also we asked the previous wonderful guest speaker, Mr. Oscar Chang, that about work-life balance, and how do you keep yourself? You know, you're busy up here trying to figure out AI and everything, right? But the body also needs to be. You know, how do you keep yourself healthy, right? Are you?
Yes. So I've been reading a lot of like self-help books. So one of the recent ones I read, and I'll mention it here, is Atomic Habits. It's fairly popular. One of the things that I've learned from there is how to break down my routine so that I can integrate exercise and things like that, and then slowly integrate the things that I want to do. So I have a couple of goals. I want to learn how to continue developing my software development skills, while at the same time keeping you know, my exercise routine consistent, while at the same time performing at work. So by being able to break down the triggers that helps you, you know, get up and run, or get up and do your exercise, or get up and read, or whatever it is very important. It's to be able to break that down on your daily routines and see where you can fit that in. When it comes to work life, because I work very much with people in very different time zones. So out of India, I'm the only one on the East Coast among my team. And, you know, really understanding when I should start working, when I should take a break. I usually take breaks in the evening. You know, I spend time with the family, or you know, do personal things, and then I start a little bit. I finish the rest of the day, the evening, in the nighttime, and then that's my day. And that's how I like to work. And I feel balanced because I still get to do all the things that I want to do, which is learning software, exercising, and then also performing well at work.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Dariana, do you have any questions that you need to chip in?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hakim, I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for your lecture for our study students and international students, our international summer program of CETYS. And your work is very interesting, and we appreciate that you share experience with our students. It's very interesting. Congratulations for your work. If Professor Ashley and Professor Francisco allows me, I would like to take the official photo for your
Okay.
group and lecture. And I ask everybody, please, if is it possible, and turn your cameras. And let me take a little photo. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Dariana is a wonderful manager who makes everything happen in this course and also other courses. Professor Velez, the honor of giving the last question for Hakeem.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have a another question. You work with a team of people that are in India. What is it that you look in a person that would be part of your team if you were to hire another member of the team? What's the key value or trait that you would expect that person to have?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's very good. Probably in the past 6 months, I've interviewed like 50 people, and we have 5 people on the team. And the thing that I look for is one of Amazon's leadership principle is learn and be curious. If you're the way Amazon interviews is we use behavioral questions. So it's talk about situational things like tell me about a time when you had a project that was not successful. How did you fix it? How do you retrospect it? One of the things that I especially look for is whether they allude to their curiosity to learn and develop and improve on. Right? It's okay to make a mistake. It's we encourage it. In fact, right? Amazon is what it is today because of that. Right? So in the responses, I especially look for people that say, when we ask the question, oh, this is what happened, and this is what I would have done. And, kind of like that retrospective is very important and this is how I would have done it had I had this skill, and this is how I would get that skill to do it better next time. And like really like thinking through it and being able to express that you're willing to learn. Because when the people that I hire, they don't know the skills, they won't know the skills that that I expect them always. But if they're willing to learn, I actually spend like 2 to 3 hours a week training them on new skills, because I tell them, if nothing else, you're going to learn something brand new from me. And that's how I manage my team. Is I spend extra hours, my free time basically, to teach them a new skill so that they can leave my team much better than just doing going to a different company, for example, so at least or working with a different team.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh. So Hakeem, the last, thank you, Professor Velez. I think that was right. The question from last week's assignments that we did, right? A lot of questions on what makes a leader be able to lead. So, and what requirements of it. Okay, maybe the last, this is the last, I promise, the last question, right? Number one, the question is said, what's next for you? What's next for your professional advancement?
So the next thing for me is I'm going to hone into more of the work-life harmony and how to improve that. So the end state would be, how do I retain a role like this, but then be able to live in the places that I want to? I want to travel, but I don't want to be stuck to a geography, or I don't want to be, now it's more accepted that people are virtual, and I'm proving that, at least in my role, that we can function virtually and challenging the norm of, can we actually now do it internationally? So the next thing is trying to push the envelope a bit to see, am I able to travel the world while working the same job, and seeing what that takes. And that requires working with my manager, understanding kind of the physical needs of being in an office and those type of things. So that's, and whether Amazon is going to be the company that allows for that, or maybe another company might. would be the big question that I have to answer in the next couple of years, next year or so.
Okay, that's great. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, to share with you, growing up, we always wonder where Hakeem is outside the house, and probably he'll be, he'll be on the ground somewhere trying to catch the grasshoppers, right? When we're running around with chickens, it's a village, right? It's running around somebody's yard, or even trying to shoot firecrackers in somebody's house. But he sees that, and then it's always the boy, what we call the wild boy. It's like the Jungle Book, right? But one of the things that I want to share is that when Hakeem started to interested in Amazon, one day my wife and I were driving, and then we get a phone call from the car, say that, oh, this Hakeem, I just want to say something that I want both of your blessings, both of you. I say, I wonder what kind of blessings is about. Is he getting married? What then? Said he's going for an Amazon interview. It's going to be a 5 or 7 step interview. Okay, so I thought that was a nice gesture that connects the family. So we give the blessings and for an interview, and the rest is history. So Hakeem, on behalf of the professors at CETYS and also the CETY itself, and our wonderful students in this class, across culture management, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for sharing your thoughts, your experience, and also your advice for us. And this is a wonderful part of being good at something, is to share. Because I always tell people that if you know something, share it with 10 other people, and 10 other people share. Because and ultimately, the things that we acquire is not ours; it's for society, right? So we wish you, Hakeem, a wonderful career, and also a wonderful work-life. Again, like you say, work-life balance and good health, and stay safe. And also, yes, Hakeem is having a Zoom session from the basement. So that's our basement. So
You see the box there.
That's the boxes. Thank you so much, Hakeem. And hope that in the future we can engage also in the discussions, wonderful discussions like this. Thank you so much.
I do have one more quick thing that I just
Yeah.
want to share.
Yeah.
One of my guiding core theme that I tell people that I work with is make sure you spend time mentoring, and then make sure you communicate that to the people that you've mentored, that they need to spend time mentoring and express that and the importance of that. So take some time out. That's why we do volunteer work and those type of things. So that's how we elevate the workforce and give people opportunities that they otherwise would not have, especially in a more global workforce.
Right.
So
Right. So Hakeem, our students can find you on LinkedIn, can they? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate everyone's time.
Yes, and thank you for all your
Thank you.
time, valuable time, Hakeem. Right.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care. Right.
Bye.
Okay. Okay. Any thoughts? Anything? Any comments? Oh, right. So we have about 17 minutes before the before the break. Our plan is to after the break we're gonna hit the ground running and finish our work, right? Because tomorrow is our presentation. But I hope you had with Mr. Oscar Chang's conversation and Hakeem's conversation, we get a sense of this continuity of these two areas that we've been talking about. Although we obviously we needed much time to talk about, but because of time, there's only 3-week course. But at least we give you a basic concept: culture and management, and also technology. And glad that we have somebody has shared us, Hakeem has shared us with first-hand experience of working with technology, and also extensively, Mr. Oscar Chang talk about the beauty of family, and also what is meaningful in what you do, and finally in life, that Mr. Oscar Chang said that health is wealth, right? Nothing else is more important than that. Okay. All right. Right, let's open this. Any discussions, any questions, any thoughts? Okay. Okay, we have one. I know that we have your Simon, but what we want to do, so I thought, is this, right? Um, I know that you did with Mr. Oscar. What we need to do is that why don't we write a one paragraph note and send it to Professor Velez and I, so that we can send it to the speakers. Number one is Mr. Oscar Chang's talk. Just answer the question. What did you learn? What was your takeaway? What did you learn from it? The note should just address the speaker directly. And I think this is one of the best thing that we can all give to someone who who give their time as well as to share with us opinion. They will appreciate it, and they will of course they will motivate them to do more talking outside of their field and mentoring and also sharing with people. So okay. So let's do that as a quick homework, right? Right, Professor Velez, right?
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Asley, I think that would be needed for
Yes.
Hakim's presentation.
Okay.
In the case of Oscar Chang, I asked, I required the students to write the key learning points.
Okay.
So what I did is I took the learning points from the students and I put it in a file, and that's what I am about to send to Oscar, so
Okay.
that he has the feedback. So the
Okay.
feedback for Oscar, I think has been already done by the students.
Wonderful. So why don't we do the same thing with that? Key learning points, just one. Key learning points, we collect that and we'll send it to the guest speakers, right? Okay. I think we do that, right? Okay. Right. Thank you, Dariana, for recording this and also being joining our session. In the remaining time, we have about 13 minutes. If you don't have any question, what I'd like you to do is that to again touch base with the group members. Well, before that, I don't think we have enough time to touch base. What we can do is that we will continue. We will start working intensively after the break, right? And after our 20 minutes break, we just jump in. But maybe this is an impromptu, but Professor Velez and I will probably have a conversation how to tie in this two concepts together. Something that we didn't have time to elaborate after this presenters gave their talk. So let's open this again, right? Probably I would start with this, right? Now, given all these things, given the presentations that the two presentations, right, that here, right? What are the key points? Meaning that the importance of data, for example, and today, the popular word, the buzzword is data science. What do you understand by the field of data science that's emerging in this whole culture of work? Anyone? We have heard the word data science, and it was mentioned several times also in this presentations. Janani?
Oh, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Data science is used to predict the customer behavior, and using the already existing data, through that business use that data and implement new ideas and strategies to improve their business.
Okay. Wonderful. It's a very good response, Janani, right? When we mention the word data science, it is one of the themes that's emerging in what we call the Industry 4.0. Now, Industry 4.0 is a fancy word to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. the fourth industrial revolution is the age of artificial intelligence, data science, 3D printing, and in fact also space exploration, and all and blockchain technology, and all the things that uses sophisticated, what we call smart machine technology. And we might think that this is still quote unquote science fiction, but after listening to many of the things that Hakeem was talking about, it's the first time I was hearing, because I know that he's working on things. He worked on Amazon Go, but the very detail of what he explained is all very new, and it just fits very well with the new environment in the new knowledge knowledge-scape, landscape of knowledge that each one of us, especially those studying now, not just need to be familiar with, but also need to to be aware of and master, in fact, because that's where jobs interviews, when you enter job interviews, these are the language that people will use, and also the words that people, terms that people will use in order for you to ask for your response. What do you mean, right? Now, I don't know what how intensive and extensive Amazon interviews, because Amazon is a very data science driven global company that moves, that moves and shake the world, in fact. But obviously, it is primarily a very important piece of the future, right? Professor Velez, in the training of our students at CETYS and also others, what how do you see this as importance in the way we educate?
It is becoming increasingly important. Actually, there is more and more in our educational programs the concept of multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary activities and projects. One of the things that I have seen, and it is, and I have seen, but it is now getting more into the narrative of our educational intent, is the concept of merging arts, technology, and business. Arts, technology, and business. And that's why one of the reasons why I liked very much the participation of Hakeem here, because you see how he's blending arts and technology and also business, by the way, so the three things merging together. And if you keep that in mind in your careers, and you put that into practice, merging the concept of art, concept of technology, and then the concept of business, I think you are going to get ahead very well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Professor Velez. Any other thoughts? Okay, he mentioned also technology as problem solver, right? And while he was presenting this, I was also thinking of this. Maybe it's the questions also in your mind. Technology and human consequences, right? Will this technology displace people, or would it create new opportunities? And how do people prepare for this? What do you think? It's a very interesting and sensitive question for social scientists, and especially when you speak of Amazon as a very controversial global corporation today, right? So, but technology is problem solver. What do you think? Just focusing on, let's say, the Amazon Go, right? It's a new brand of stores, and I think many stores are exploring this also as an avenue. So, what do you think? Will there be a threat, or will there be an opportunity for human beings to live with?
Well, I think they are for sure opportunities to our society to advance into a new era.
Mm-hmm.
But situating the problem that kind of stores in Mexico, I think they become a problem because of the job necessities that are here in my country.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, that kind of stores that there's no cashier, there's no many employees. So I think it's true they are something positive, but they also carry along some negative things, like that they will take job opportunities from people. So
Mm-hmm.
it's depending on how you see it.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful, Anna. Right. So are we saying that technology is also cultural? That the development of technology depends on the cultural realities of where people live? How do you see that? Well, the technology works, some technology works in America, in Europe, in Germany, for example. The most highly advanced technological society is Germans. I think, would you agree, Professor Velez? Germans have perfected the technological expertise. And the most globalized and also the most extensively used and produced technology innovations are probably in China now. So we have research R&D in Germany and production in as massive as China. But America has its own niche, for example, technological niche. So are we saying that, it's cultural, and in places such as parts of Mexico, Papua New Guinea, technology still is whatever you use as the resources outside, in the natural resources, that's also considered technology. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think? Tanya, here for just 1 or 2 minutes, and then asking people who have their camera on, right? Tanya, what do you think? Is technology cultural?
I think it is. I can hear all the question because my internet is really bad, so
Okay.
it freeze.
Okay.
But I think it as you say, it depends on the culture. But I don't want to. I don't know what to say.
Okay. That's a wonderful. That's a wonderful response itself, right? Technology is cultural. Professor Velez, from your research and also from your travel and observing in society and studying them, what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts is that it has a lot to do with the level of development of a country.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the cultural aspect plays a role in into the extent that a particular culture is oriented towards developing technology and knowledge. Let me tell you why I think this way. In Latin America, it is very well known that the level of technical research and development in our countries is very low. The patent production of a country such as, for instance, Israel,
Mm-hmm.
if you take that proportional to the population, is extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of all Latin America is extremely low.
Mm-hmm.
If you take scientific production in universities, again, in Latin America is relatively low as compared to other countries. So yes, it has to do with the level of economic development of the countries, but there's probably some cultural element there in that leads other cultures to focus more on this kind of activities, and then others to focus on other areas, probably in the arts or socialization, other areas. more than the technology and science. But there is also a learning element.
Mm-hmm.
That's why from early childhood, we have to put in place programs that orient and guide our students since very early childhood into embracing engineering, embracing technology, embracing science. But if we do not teach the population since the very early childhood, and if within their families there is prioritization for other things, then the population will not move into the direction of embracing the science, embracing technology, and so forth. But again, it is a matter of some cultural elements, and it is also a matter of the level of technological, the level of economic development of the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Okay. Well, thank you, Professor Velez. I think it gives us the whole, understanding of the comparative advantage of societies, and also brings a question, right? The meaning of technology itself. Is it high tech? Is it appropriate technology based on available resources? And this has been an ongoing debate throughout the, in fact, the whole century, about what it means, technology means, and how do people adapt to all these things, and what makes countries been dependent on other countries on technology transfer, and what happened when technology is not a natural evolution of the country, developed naturally from the country, and it becomes dependent on other expertise and everything, and that I think creates the unequal distribution of economic development in countries. So that's another related topic. But I think this is best time for us to take our break. So it's 12:32. Thank you for paying attention. I thank all of you. Congratulate all of you for still being attentive. For the last 2 weeks and a half. And we'll come back at 12:50, around 12:52 after the break, and then we'll start our group work. All right? Okay. All right. I'll see you in 20 minutes, all of you.